Present.
Ms. Wewell?
Present.
Mr. Valencia?
Present.
Ms. Panado?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
Mr. Aiken?
Present.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mr. Stenbridge.
We will go to the recommendation scheduled for 11:30 at this point. Before we go into them, I will ask Madam Chair if she has any comments she'd like to make on 10 Linden Street.
Yes, just to put on the record that we want to acknowledge that there were letters received both in support and opposition. We received 7 in opposition and 12 in support. And after Mr. Stenbridge reads the recommendations, I just want to make sure that we give Mr. Newman an opportunity to comment / correct information on the record. And if there is anyone who wishes to speak, we will give them the opportunity to do so. Mr. Stenbridge.
With that, we'll go to the recommendations from the subcommittee. We'll start with case BOA 1513760 with the address of 753 East Broadway. The subcommittee approved the recommendation. Next, we have case BOA 1496428 with the address of 10 Linden Street. The subcommittee approved the recommendation. Next, we have case BOA 1253685 with the address of 809 to 811 Harrison Avenue. The subcommittee approved the recommendation. Next, we have case BOA 1525804 with the address of 54 John Elliott Square. The subcommittee approved the recommendation with the proviso of the no building code relief for accessible needs. Next, we have case BOA 1517797 with 46 Linwood Street. This was deferred until December 7th of this year. Next, we have case BOA 1506437 with the address of 4 O'Donnell Terrace. This was approved by the subcommittee. Next, we have case BOA 1449528, the address of 253 Huntington Avenue. The address of 253 Huntington Avenue, which was approved with proviso of revised plans with 2, not 3 bedrooms, but to be submitted. Next, we have case BOA 1467152 with the address of 713 to 715 Center Street. This was approved with the proviso of a designated accessible route from the public area into the patio. Next and finally, we have case BOA 1462924 of the address of 25 Burr Street. This was deferred until December 7th of this year. And those were the recommendations from the subcommittee.
Mr. Newman, are you available to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair. So for 10 Linden Street, The tally we went off of was an older tally. We had ultimately 3 letters that came into our office expressing opposition to 10 Linden. I know there were additional emails that were also sent directly to the ZBA public input email. Ultimately, it sounds like the board received 7 in opposition in total and 12 in support. The opposition letters that we received, I kind of touched upon it before in my previous testimony, concerns regarding water runoff, connection to a private sewer line in the rear, loss of privacy with the windows on the dormers. The additional letters also expressed concerns over the loss of a single family for that street and the loss of the character for the neighborhood, as well as concerns were raised in other emails regarding the size of the rear addition and the shadow impacts that could have on neighboring properties. They did express that they hoped that a compromise could be found with the applicant that would still allow for the mother to move in with the family. The letters of support that we received and the board has access to mostly outlined the family's many years in the South Boston community in the hopes that the family would be able to remain with their mother moving into the property. I believe that's all the information that we have, and the board has access to that. I apologize for any mix-ups there. With that, we'll defer to the board at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding 10 Linden? Okay, hearing none. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I apologize. Yes, Andrew Ryan is here to testify. I just asked him to unmute.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for hearing me. I'm a direct abutter, and I'm speaking in opposition to the project. Just wanted to kind of reiterate what was said by Connor. That we'd be supportive of something slimmed down, but we have concerns particularly about how far, just basically no other houses on the street go back. And this would be an addition over a private sewer line that would be unprecedented for the street. And we have concerns about the impact on the street and the interior courtyard in the neighborhood. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I have some other raised hands here. Let me go to Jen, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Jen, are you looking at your testimony here or weigh in on this?
My apologies. I knew Andrew was I'm Andrew's wife, and I knew he was planning to speak, and was concerned when I didn't know if he was going to be able to. So
no worries.
Second what he said. Thanks.
Thank you.
No additional raised hands. Thanks.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Motion to approve the recommendations from the subcommittee from October 26th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Bonato?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken? Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, motion carries.
We will now move on to the rediscussions scheduled for 11:30 a.m. First, we have case BOA 1468247 with the address of 279 Rosendale Avenue. Is the applicant and or the representative present to explain to the board?
He's on. 1 second. Jose, can you? I'm going to make you a panelist, and that will allow you to unmute yourself. This is a 2-step process. So just unmute yourself when you become a panelist, and you'll be able to speak.
Okay, I'm ready.
Go on.
Actually, Luis, are you on the call?
Is it Luis Santana? You're the panelist for the, okay, I'm gonna make you a panelist as well.
Okay, so yeah, Luis should be the panelist. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, no worries. What about Gita Akar? Is that person with you too, with your group? Never mind. All right. Can you unmute yourself, Luis?
Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I'm here representing Mr. Jose de la Rosa. the owner of this existing two-family in Rosendale. This is a modest proposal. We are, first of all, let me get to the violations. There are a few violations. The most important one is the actual use, which is not permitted. This is a two-family zone, and we are proposing a third unit in the building. The other significant violation is the off-street parking. 2 are required per unit, and there is an existing driveway that can accommodate a maximum of 2. So the total spaces will be about 6 spaces, and that is insufficient. And the other violations, not really material. The lot area, there is no change. There is an 8,000 square feet required for 3 units, and an 8,000 required for any other use under the zoning regulations. The FAR also is existing non-conforming FAR at 0.8, and we will be maintaining the FAR at 0.8. And the way that we will accomplish that, if you can please show this slide for the floor plans on the existing conditions. We will be taking over, first of all, the basement area is an existing finished space. And as you can see to the top left corner, there is a large mechanical room. So our plan, if we go to, there exists now 2 bedrooms and a living room and an office. And we will decrease, as you can see on this slide, the mechanical room significantly. We will be providing an exterior access bulkhead, and we'll be adding new window wells for the bedroom. That's basically all the exterior work and interior work. The existing office on the right corner bottom will be changed into a storage and laundry. And that's how we manage to maintain the same FAR. The space will be in compliance with the building code in terms of ceiling height and means of egress. The owner is planning to sprinkle the building completely as required per code. To add, one of the concerns of the neighbors during our meeting is that the off-street parking. Each house on this block has driveways, and in my opinion, there is adequate off-street parking as well. The side yards exist right now, although it's paved and can accommodate 2-3 cars. It's a little bit narrow, less than 10 feet, and that's why we choose not to provide additional parking in the rear. On top of that, by adding additional parking spaces, we'll decrease the existing open space, which is insufficient as it is right now. So we basically balance the need for parking and the required open space and left that as it is. There are no other changes to the exterior of the building. We will maintain the building as it is, except for the window well and the bulkhead on the rear. Everything else remains the same. With this, I conclude my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Santana. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, can I have public testimony?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is Diana Brownchuck from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. At this time, we defer judgment to the board. We held a highly attended community meeting on June 15th. We received multiple letters and 5 phone calls in opposition, citing the property prior to the scheduled ZBA hearing in early August. Most community members are concerned about the fact that there's already tenants living in the basement, as well as the parking concerns already addressed by Luis Santana. Earlier this morning, Mr. Santana also submitted 7 letters of support from some abutters, verifying that those abutters were not at the meeting earlier in June. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a raised hand here. John, you looking to give testimony?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Mr. Santana said that there was an existing finishing space in the basement, and at the moment, that's true. And the reason is because they started to turn this two-family house into a three-family house. And the only reason we're having this hearing is because he got caught. So there are people living in there. I believe there's at least 6 cars associated with that house. In the past, there were parties there and more than once, where the police were called multiple times. I would also like to know what the license number is of the daycare on the 2nd floor. And parking is a problem here, even though most houses do have at least a small driveway. To the point where people, even though they're not supposed to, are putting up spots in front of their house so they can at least park in front of their house. On August 8th, Mr. Santana asked for this delay, and he said specifically so that Mr. De La Rosa could reach out to the neighbors. He has not done that. I live across the street. The abutter, John, his immediate neighbor, hasn't heard anything. In fact, he was unaware of this meeting until I told him yesterday. So there's been no outreach. I would love to see where these letters of support come from, because I don't believe that it's anybody that lives in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any other raised hands?
Yes.
No additional raised hands, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I heard the person also comment on a daycare. Can you comment on that and just briefly address his other questions, because this is a residential use, correct?
Yes, virtually every day I see...
I'm sorry, not you. I'm asking for the applicant to respond.
I beg your pardon, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to comment on the outreach. The reason that we asked for a deferral, and it was granted by the board during our previous meeting, as after discussion with Mr. La Rosa, he indicated that he will contact the neighbors in order to mitigate some of their concerns. And my understanding is that that was done. And those letters were provided to me this morning yesterday by Mr. De La Rosa, and I submitted them to the board. So it's my understanding that the outreach took place. To what extent, I cannot comment on that, but definitely there are letters. And my understanding is that those letters are from members of the community of the neighborhood. In terms of the daycare center, although and I will also have Mr. La Rosa speak to that. I am not aware of that, and it's not part of this process. The only request under this appeal is for the extension of that basement unit. If Mr. La Rosa wants to comment on the daycare, if there's any evidence of that, please, Jose, go ahead.
Sure, yes. And this is, first off, I want to address the fact of what was the question that Mr. John mentioned, that we got caught. There was nobody got caught. No one got caught on this. I mean, I got the building the way it was. I made some changes to it, and I'm going through the process to get it, approved. There's been a lot of speculation about what we're doing, what we're not doing, and I just, it's not fair the way it's coming. But about the daycare, there is no daycare, and this is the misjudgment that many people have with some cultures. For example, the Latinos, they will take care of their children and their grandchildren, and that is what is going on in that house. So I think there are like 2 or 3 kids coming in. It's not a commercial business, but obviously they see somebody coming picking up their kids, and they immediately assume that it's a business going on without a license. The parking situation, I mean, I have been there so many times, and I believe that, some of the people that actually submitted the letters, there's no issues with the parking, we know that, but again, I understand that there will be opposition to that based on some, information. The letters are real. There are people that live right on that street, the street on the other side, and I did reach out to a few people out there. There were some people that were not open to a conversation, so obviously I did not want to reach. But the ones that I did, I mean, I don't think there was any concerns. They did talk about the parking situation, but they said, they expressed themselves that they didn't have any issues with parking.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
what I have to say.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
I'd like some motion to approve with BPDA design review.
Is there a second? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, having a big family isn't against the law, so I think that's a common misconception. In the city, it's a busy place and people have children, you know.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This isn't about a daycare, though.
I'm sorry, we are in the process of voting. Mr. Stembridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, the motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, we go to case BOA 1341023 with the address of 81 Woodlawn Street. Is the applicant and/or their representative present to explain to the board?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Richard Linds with the business address of 245 Sumner Street in East Boston. On behalf of the petitioner, Rita Carr is here with us, as well as the architect, Norberto Leon. Perhaps we could jump right to maybe slide 5 to start off the presentation. That's perfect. So, Madam Chair, this is a vacant lot located in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood, for which we are proposing to construct a new 3-unit residential dwelling. This would be a conforming use in the zoning subdistrict. This is the 3F 5000 district, therefore a 3-family proposed use is permitted. Because the way that the code is written under Article 55, there are some technical adjustments where the size of lot or width of lot varies depending upon what you're building. For example, if you're building a row house or a townhouse building, the lot width is as small as 25 feet for the district. If you're proposing any other use, it's as high as 45 feet. I'll run through the zoning table in a moment. Just wanted to orient everybody with the surrounding context. If we could jump down to slide 7, that probably shows a little bit more information. Yeah, so this is probably a good place to stop. So you can see here the surrounding context is a very similar building located to our right of our lot. That's that red triple decker. As you can see, this side of Woodlawn is actually sloped. I am pretty familiar with the street. I've done other projects in the area. If we jump down to the next slide, I think there's an indication of other projects. Yeah, correct. So we can see here some other examples of properties that are recently either renovated or newly constructed or under construction properties, very similar in size to what we're proposing. Each of these units are intended to be generously sized at 3-bedroom, 2-bath. They're a little over 1,000 square feet each. With respect to the relief that's necessary, if you want to slide down to the proposed plotted slide 9, that's probably helpful. So starting off with a lot size, because this is considered any other use, a minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet is required. However, the minimum lot size for the district is actually 3,000 square feet. We are at 3,500 square feet, so a little bit more than what the absolute minimum would be, but under what the specific use for lot size would be. I would point out it is quite consistent in size with many of the lots in the area, and I believe in the BPDA's recommendation, they identify that as being quite consistent based upon where we're at for lot size. With respect to the lot width, for any other use, 45 feet is the minimum lot width. We're at 40 feet, which actually is conforming for 2 types of uses in the district. As I said earlier, it does go down as far as 25 feet, so we do need a variance of 5 feet in our lot width. But again, this being quite consistent with the surrounding lot sizes in the immediate vicinity. Side yard, even though we were cited for it, I want to point out that Jamaica Plain does have sort of an analysis when it comes to side yards. The minimum side yard setback under footnote 6 in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood is 7 feet. We do meet the requirement for 7 feet for each side, and the minimum requirement is also that it's at least 10 feet from an adjoining property. I know that we did provide an additional plan, which may be on the next slide. We're actually 12 feet from adjoining properties. There's about a 5-foot setback from each of the properties, both left and right. However, because the zoning code under footnote 6 for Jamaica Plains says that you have to have an aggregate of at least 17 feet, we technically don't comply with the side yard requirements, even though we do meet the minimum 7-foot setback as well as the 10-foot setback from adjoining structures. So we're requesting relief for that as well. With respect to the rear yard, because this would be considered a shallow lot at about 87.5 feet deep, we're not required to meet the full 20-foot yard setback. We're actually able to reduce our rear yard setback by 6 inches for each foot under 100 feet this lot measures, provided that we don't go below 15 feet. As a result, as you can see here, we are 20 feet with our building to the rear property line, and we do have a rear deck that does go into the backyard, but we are in compliance with the rear yard setback as well. With respect to the front yard, we are showing a setback of 18 feet. 15 is the minimum required. However, I suspect that if the board were to pass this, it would be subject to BPDA design review, and there is a modal requirement for the Jamaica Plain neighborhood, so this would have to be adjusted based upon what the modal setback is for Woodlawn Street. With respect to FAR, we are proposing at 1.1. 0.6 is the maximum. However, and I know we do have a slide here as well, it's relatively consistent with the FAR for most of the surrounding neighborhood structures in the area. Open space, when we are proposing for any other use under Article 55, the tables of Article 55 says you have to have 1,250 square feet per lot. In this case, we're proposing a little over 1,700 square feet for open space, and therefore would be compliant with the open space requirements. Last but not least is parking. We do propose a total of 3 parking spaces that are accessed from a curb cut to the front of the building and a carport. That would be compliant with the parking requirements under Article 55. If we want to scroll down quickly, I'll try to jump through the floor plans. So if we can go down to slide 11, and then we can walk through the elevations as well. So this is showing the first level plan as well as the carport located towards the front, accommodating 3 parking spaces. As you can see, the layout of the unit is living area forward with bedrooms and bathrooms located towards the rear with access to an outside deck. If we jump to the next slide, that'll show us the second and third levels, which are pretty consistent in layout and size. Again, having access out to rear decks for some opportunity for open space. If we go to the next slide, I believe we have our roof plan as well. We're not proposing any roof deck on this particular project. I believe that was in response to comments that were heard in the community process. But here we have a section plan showing the layout for the building itself. Next slide, please. Just our elevations, both front and rear. As you can see, the rear is generally at the grade for the back of the property because of the slope. The front of the property, very consistent with the design of most buildings on that side of Woodlawn, does have the lower level, which we would access the parking for, with the 3 levels of livable space located above. Next slide, please. Showing our elevations, I believe we're showing the right side here. Because of our setbacks, we do have sufficient ability to incorporate windows and openings on both sides of the building. Next slide, please. And just showing our left side elevation as well. I will pause there, Madam Chair, if there are any specific questions that the board has regarding the proposal, or I can have the architect address them specifically.
Any questions from the board?
Can you address how this complies with BTD recommendations regarding sort of the number of spaces you need to create in order to take away public on-street parking?
Yeah. Through the chair, I believe BTD's requirement is that for every space you're taking away from the street, you have to be creating at least 2 parking spaces. My understanding is that BTD does not want any curb cuts for single parking. So if there's a proposal to add 1 off-street parking space, BTD does not want you to cut the curb. We are adding 3 off-street parking spaces, which I believe exceeds the expectation of what BTD wants in this case. I know there was some comments about the width of the curb cut, and we're happy to address that through design review if the board is inclined to grant relief for the proposal.
So just to be clear, how many on-street parking spaces does this proposal remove?
I believe it would be 2 based upon the current width of the curb cut, but I understand that the recommendation is to see the curb cut reduced. So we will likely be probably 1.5 parking spaces overall, which I think is typical for a curb cut.
1.5, meaning 2.
Yeah. Trying to
we don't really have half cars.
Yeah.
Good point. Any other questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I have a question. So I understand the curb cut is about 26 feet wide, but it looks like from the drawings that the actual area for the cars to park is 24 feet wide, and you are contemplating 3 cars. Is that correct?
Correct. So I believe 1 would be compact and 2 up to full-size spaces, but enough to have at least 8-foot width for each.
Yeah, I just have concerns with that ability to accommodate 3 cars, you know, with doors opening and the maneuverability, so I'll just leave that there.
Understood.
Any other questions from the board? May I have public testimony?
Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Melissa Beltran from the Office of Neighborhood Services. At this time, the mayor's office would like to defer to the judgment on the board. An abutters meeting was held from the previous liaison. We are aware of some concerns expressed from the community, such as concerns about the amount of stone removal needed and the potential loss of street parking, and reservations about the proposed setbacks from the neighboring properties. We received a letter from JPNC where they expressed opposition to the proposal. JPNC also heard similar concerns and recommended denial. With that information, I will defer this board. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
I do have an additional raised hand here. 1 second. Ken, are you looking to give testimony? If so, I sent a request on you. I'll go to David as well. You're looking to give, oh, go ahead, Ken.
Actually, sorry, I should have changed that. That's my husband's name.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Can you just give your name and address and tell us if you're in support of opposition?
Yes. My name is Colleen Doherty. I'm at 72 Woodlawn, apartment 2. I'm speaking in opposition to this proposal. One of my concerns has been the process. As was mentioned a few moments ago, the Neighborhood Council recommended a denial of this proposal last December. And during that meeting, they recommended that the developer hold a meeting with neighbors to discuss neighborhood concerns. That never happened. Almost a year has gone by. They never set up a meeting with us, which I actually find insulting as a neighbor, and certainly raises concerns about their attitude towards people who live in the neighborhood. So to me, that's a major negative that they never followed that directive. And it's been mentioned before, the neighbors have a lot of concerns about the amount of rock that is going to need to be removed and the impact that will have with people who live in the surrounding area. You know, an additional concern with that rock removal might be any kind of displacement of rodents and the impact that would have on neighbors. So I believe you have a number of letters and comments from people who live on Woodlawn Street. And I would strongly encourage you to take, those letters are all in opposition. I'm not aware of any positive letters that have been sent to you. I strongly urge you to take into account the position of people who actually live on the street.
Thank you.
Okay, Claudia, and then I'll go to Luis. Can you state your name and address for the record, and then please tell us if you're in support or opposition?
Yes, Claudia Dunn, 42 Woodlawn Street, and I'm opposed to this. I didn't hear anyone mention the number of letters that you received in opposition to this. And I know there are very detailed letters sent in. I sent one in myself. Really detail a lot of things that are left out of the proposal. Couple of comments. One, in terms of the pictures showing the other two buildings that were developed on this street, they were both developed on properties that had some kind of building on it before. This property is completely undeveloped. It's never had a house on it whatsoever. The issues of drilling and rock removal and ledge removal, it's still not been addressed sufficiently. The process we've had with other developers on the street has been very different. We've actually only had, going back to 2017, when they first proposed this, and the JP zoning board.
Can you please wrap up?
I'm trying.
Thank you.
That we've only had actually 1 or 2 meetings with this developer, just with the architect, and all the other meetings were with the zoning board. And when the zoning board instructed them to meet with us again, they never did. So I just urge you to really pay attention to the detailed letters about the concerns that are quite substantial. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Louise?
Hi, thank you. This is Louise Outler. I live immediately adjacent to this to this proposed project at number 83. I've been outspoken in my opposition to this project in several areas, and I'd like to focus on a couple. One is, as mentioned, the process in which this particular design that you're seeing today is one that was never presented to our community in any of the community, community meetings that we had. Pardon me. This garage space, carport space that they've referred to is newly introduced, and we were given to believe that that was removed from a far past design because we were so concerned about this ledge removal that's required. This only exacerbates that. I'm worried particularly about the ledge removal because my home is over 130 years old. Pardon me, I have a frog in my throat. And that's a similar age to all the buildings around it. We all have fieldstone basements, and they must do stone removal with hoe rams, impact removal, which is the vibrations from which are, it's a legitimate and credible concern that they're going to cause structural damage to our homes. Furthermore, all these buildings have, most of them have original plaster walls still, which are also subject to damage by this kind of vibration. So the bait and switch of changing the design after going through their very casual approach to the public process. I also recently sent some photographs in of the lot that's at number 45 Woodlawn Street, which is the beginning of the ledge, which shows clearly how much stone is existent in a non-developed lot. The drawings that they've submitted us, I believe, erroneously suggest that there's a very low ledge profile, and in fact, that ledge was visible.
Can you please wrap up, Ms. Outler?
Yes, absolutely. That ledge was visible at the street before this lot was neglected, so that the overgrowth has happened. The developer's been a terrible neighbor. They've never shoveled, they've never raked a leaf, and they've allowed this mountain of vegetation to grow up the street. So I really urge you to please at least defer decision on this until they can come back to us and have a legitimate and meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Madam Chair, do you want me to keep going? There are, looks like 2 additional raised hands.
Please be brief and add new information only. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to Matt.
Hi, Matt Reynolds, Director Butter on the other side at 77 Woodlawn. I just want to echo concerns about removal as a Director Butter, the ledge removal and impact it will have there and on the process. Since I moved in 2016, I've never had a meeting that we were able to provide our input from the community, and as others have mentioned, every time we've had a public meeting, there have been changes to the plans that have never been shown to us, which I thought maybe was the norm, but based on being on this call for an hour and a half, I'm pleasantly surprised that other builders tend to actually have a community process, and that has not been present here. So I urge you to consider our feedback. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and David. Oh, sorry, I muted you by mistake, David. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is David Hofer. I'm at 77 Woodlawn, Unit 3. I'm also a direct abutter. My concern is in the December meeting with the JP Zoning Board, the architect did not seem open to taking out insurance in case of foundation damages because of the rock removal that will probably have to happen. And also did not seem open to taking videos, having videos taken of the foundations to compare before and after in case damages did occur. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Lenz, do you
Yes.
want to briefly respond?
Thank you very much. So Madam Chair, I'm relatively newer to the project. I did not handle the community process on this, but certainly have inquired of my client before proceeding before the zoning board as to the extent of community process. There have been numerous community meetings. Tells me there's at least been 5 meetings on this topic. And certainly, we've heard from some people expressing opposition. I'm advised that they actually supported the project previously, and that there's now these new concerns over, ledge and other issues. Let me just point out for the board's perspective, or for the board's perspective, methods of construction are governed by the state building code. We certainly aren't going to go in, not unlike any other project on this street, including ones that I've worked on before, and do things that are not consistent with the standards and practices for construction. With respect to the comment that was made about insurance and the architect not agreeing to that, I find that to be somewhat, misleading. The contractor who will be responsible for building this will have to have builder's risk. It is of best practice and most prudent to go in and do site surveys on surrounding properties when you're doing any type of work, including foundation work or ledge work. So while I do understand that there is certainly concern over that, it's not unlike any other concern that has been heard before on the street when it comes to development. And the opportunity to include that part of the process in construction is always going to be part of any project, including, I also heard a comment about rodents and rodent control. Again, all issues that get addressed in connection with the permitting. To bring this back in for a landing, Madam Chair, this is a by right use. 3-family is an allowed use in the district. It is being designed and taking into consideration the surrounding context in the area. And again, that's echoed in the BPDA's comments. I do understand that the parking, there was sort of a mixed bag on this, Madam Chair. It's one of the reasons why the parking is included. I think originally this was proposed at no parking. There was a lot of concern about parking that we heard. So as is always the case, I find when it comes to parking, we can't please everyone. We're trying to address the concerns that we did hear about parking, and that's one of the reasons why parking has been incorporated, and specifically to remove one of the violations that was originally cited for insufficient off-street parking. So I just want to make sure those are clear on the record in responses to the comments that we did just hear.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny without prejudice. And Mr. Lenz, I would just, hopefully you can convince your client to better communicate with the community. I'm not really too concerned with the actual building and the ledge per se because of, contractors' responsibilities, but it's more the community aspect that needs to be taken seriously here, I think.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge.
Yes, and I would echo Mr. Collins' opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Wewell.
Yes, and I would say my concerns are mainly limited to, the removal of on-street spaces for these off-street spaces, and I do have concerns as to how many you will actually be able to fit there. It sort of kind of outweighs for me the benefit to locate parking on site when it looks to be pretty tight.
Mr. Valencia.
I vote yes. I agree with the comments, and also it seems that the JP zoning committee asked the developer to meet with the community. I have no issue with the building. I have no issue with the 3 units, but I think the developer should take some time and talk to the neighbors and clarify some of the issues that they have been asking and come back.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
And yes, I echo the rest of the board members' comments on this motion.
Okay, skip Ms. Pinato, sorry. Ms. Pinato?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm like, I have the list right in front of me, but I seem to gloss over something. All right, the chair also votes yes, motion carries. Good luck. Please go back to the community, as folks have said.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to case BOA 1361964 with the address of 34 Cobden Street. Is the applicant and their representative present to explain?
Yes, Mr. Stembridge. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Attorney Derek Small. I have a business address on 51 Dobson Road. I have on the call with me Mr. Robert Nichols, who's a consultant and broker for the project. Madam Chair, we're here today seeking relief to erect a 3-family dwelling on a vacant lot. The zoning subdistrict here is a 3F4000. Our lot size is approximately 3,600 square feet, and the violations are as follows. Lot size, again, 4,000, we're in a 3F4000 subdistrict, and we have approximately 3,600 square feet. Lot width, lot frontage, the requirement is 45 feet, we have 25. Floor area ratio, the requirement is 0.8. We are proposing 1.2. Side yard insufficient, the requirement is 10. We have 3 feet on one side and approximately 8 on the other. And rear yard insufficient, the requirement is 30 feet and we have 20 feet. Madam Chair, the units consist of 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and are approximately 1,400 square feet. And these will be homeownership opportunities as we move forward. I can stop there and answer any questions that board members may have.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about parking? It looks like there are some concerns around that.
Yes, we are proposing approximately 3 or 4 spaces inside the building underground. They are going to be tandem spaces, and that's what we're providing for off-street parking.
Questions from the board?
So what is the situation I see 4 cars right now. What is the situation for the car in front of the trash bin if they want to leave? What happened? There is no way for those cars to get in and out without driving everybody out of the garage.
I'll let the consultant, Robert Nichols, speak to that. Robert?
I'm here. Thank you, Derek, and good afternoon, members of the board and Madam Chairwoman. Robert Nichols here, and yeah, relative to the parking, the property was designed obviously lengthwise because of the way the lot sits. And as a result of that, we decided to do tandem parking, similar to what you see in some situations in Back Bay in the South End, where there's tandem parking at alleys and other parts of Jamaica Plain as well, where there's basically like a key share in the hallway where there's a designated location or key box that all of the unit owners would have access to, and they'd be able to move each other's cars to exit and put the cars back. It is a bit of a hassle, but I have a friend, he owns a condo on Commonwealth Ave, and it's a situation he's gotten used to very quickly. And they just, have an understanding as to how that'll work. And just so you know, there'll only really be 3 parking spaces. It can fit up to 4 cars if a guest comes over and there's no parking on the street, but as a homeownership opportunity, we're only giving 1 space to each of the unit owners.
Okay. Did that address your question, Mr. Valencia?
Somehow, thank you.
You can feel free to follow up if you...
I'm just trying to figure it out how the homeowners are going to negotiate who is going to park in front of the trash, or who's going to leave at 4 in the morning and how everybody is going to let people in and out.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking about that at this moment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other
and as
questions?
Mr. Nichols said, those key sharing situations are very prevalent in other areas of the city as well.
Correct.
Other questions from the board?
I mean, but it is clear that you are designing parking that doesn't meet the requirements of our zoning code, and that so the maneuverability isn't met here.
That is correct. Yes, Panado. And what we've tried to do is we tried to address some of the parking concerns of folks on the street in creating some parking on the site itself.
What's the parking situation on the street?
Parking on Cobham Street is actually not that bad. There are a number of vacant lots along the street, but there's obviously a request in the area for more parking, and so that's what we're trying to accommodate some off-street parking space on the site itself. But I'm sure our residents will say that there's a big parking problem, but there's a parking problem throughout the city.
Other questions from the board?
Yeah. How long is the curb cut? I didn't see a plot plan in our materials.
The curb cut would be a standard 10-foot wide curb cut, taking one spot off the street. Okay. I don't know if it's on this site plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's have public testimony, please.
Sorry, I have one other question, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Could we just hear about the building height and the floor height of the units? It sounds like can you speak a little bit more to that, please?
Sure. I think the building height, we are not being cited for building height, so we are staying below the 35-foot requirement in this zoning sub-district.
Right, but can you speak to what that means for the heights of the floor-to-ceiling heights in the units?
I think I don't have that information in front of me. Robert, do you have that information? I think they were floor-to-ceiling heights in the units were about 8 feet.
I'll pull it up now, but yeah, I believe it was 8 feet. I'm gonna just double check here. Let's see the elevations. It doesn't give yet. It's showing as 7 feet on the final version of the plans.
It seems as if I'm concerned that it seems as if you're making changes. You're shrinking the building height, keeping the units. Number of units the same, adding the 4 tandem parking spaces.
That's not tall at all.
Other elements that you're sort of trying to achieve too many outcomes with. So 7 foot floor to ceiling is pretty tight. But thank you for verifying that.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Madam Chair, I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
From the Disabilities Commission, they stated that there is no accessible entrance to the building or to the garage parking. Could the folks respond to that, please?
So there's a lift on the front of the property, the front right, from an accessibility standpoint, and I believe the doorways were made ADA compliant as well, as that did come up through our due diligence process for Unit 1.
Yes, and you can see the handicap restrooms there for Unit 1 and the lift in the front.
Okay, so the comment comes from back in August, so something was done after that.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. May we have public testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, Connor Newman with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. This time, the Mayor's Office would like to defer to the judgment of this board. Some background information on the community process. During the abutters meetings, there were some residents who expressed support for this proposal and others who expressed strong opposition. The concerns raised were that the lot was rather narrow and they didn't feel that there was enough space to allow for this 3-family to be built. The RPNA, which is, I guess, a localized civic group, voted to oppose. And then the Garrison Trotter Neighborhood Association sent in a letter of support for this proposal. With that, we'll defer to the board at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newman.
Okay, go to some callers. 617390 sent a request to unmute you. You looking to give testimony on this proposal?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead. Can you briefly give us your
Yes.
name and address and tell us if you're in support or opposition?
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Mark Jones. I'm a member of the RPS, Roxbury Puddingstone Neighborhood Association. I live at number 8 Compton Street, and I am in opposition. What the gentleman said was incorrect as far as there's parking spaces on Cobden. That is incorrect. There are cars on both sides of Cobden Street from top to bottom, and there are no vacant lots. The proposed dwelling is not consistent with the existing character of the historic dwellings. Vis-a-vis, there's no underground parking lots. And I'm expressing an extreme safety concern as far as the underground parking lot, where the driveway would have an incline towards the building. Now, what would happen under inclement weather where we have an elementary school at the top of Cobden and Walnut Avenue, the David Ellis School, where people walk their children, back and forth to school. And if we have inclement weather, what would happen if, someone would slip and fall? They wouldn't fall away from the building. They would fall into the building. And my question also would be, who would be liable? Would the city be liable for that, or would the applicant be liable? There's also an issue of non-compliant with the ADA. There's also a non-easement agreement. And if this dwelling were built, I think it would be a 3 to 5 foot space with the existing structure, which would make it impossible for, if a fire occurred, it would be impossible for the fire department, which I am a retired member of, for the fire department to actually hoist a ladder. And it would be virtually impossible for EMS if there was an emergency call for people. And as far as the Garrison Trotter Association's letter of support, myself and another colleague confronted the president, Louis Elisa, last year on his position, and he said that he was opposed to the project. And the letter that the Garrison Trotter Neighborhood Association wrote by Mr. Roy Thompson is with prejudice, because in the middle of paragraph of the letter, it states that members were present, but we were not present at this meeting when Mr. Clemens made his presentation to the Garrison Trotter. So I yield my comments, but we have an extreme concern as far as safety is concerned, especially with inclement weather and the underground driveway, because all the other driveways are inclined out. This one is inclined in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am in opposition to this project.
State your name and address.
Oh, sure. Felicia Hayes, 21 Cobden Street. And again, I'm in opposition for some of the same reasons mentioned by my neighbor, Mark. It is the design with the underground garage is completely incompatible, mismatched totally with the rest of the neighborhood. My second concern is that I believe we're going to be losing 2 parking spaces in order to just add 1. So 2 publicly available spaces for the addition of 1 additional spot in the garage. I'm also concerned about the loss of privacy for the direct abutters on the right. I'm not discounting. I believe any letters of support were submitted by residents at 36, and they're all renters. There are no homeowners there. So all of the support for this comes from renters who are, and I'm not discounting their opinions, but they're implicitly I don't understand how, I don't feel it's right for people
Okay.
to
Can you
invest.
focus on your opposition, not others' support?
Okay, and Neil, I know you, in the comments, can you give us new information? I know you mentioned in the comments the issue with the parking. Can you just briefly tell us your name and address and give us new information? Neil, can you hear us?
My name is Neil Boyer. I'm at 20.
You sound muffled, Neil.
We can't hear you. Can you speak up?
So you haven't heard anything I've said?
No, not you, Felicia.
We heard you, Felicia. She's moved on to the next person.
I wasn't
My name
finished.
is Neil Boyer, and I'm at 22 Coffin Street.
God.
And I think that one of the, I second the comments of my neighbor Felicia. We do have a serious parking problem. Many of us, because there is a school at the top of the street, and many teachers also park on the street. So it is a challenge. But I think, my major concerns are, A, the issue of a fire hazard in the event that, it is a really small space. Now, if you're talking about cars parked underneath, if there's a fire, not only do you have the building catching fire, now you have the issue of cars possibly exploding, and then you have the issue of, there's no green space. So, if there would have been a fire hazard with the small space, but now if you're talking about putting cars underneath, that's just going to exacerbate the risk as well.
Thank you, Neil. Are there any other raised hands?
No.
Can we have a quick, brief response from the applicant?
Sure, Madam Chair. With regard to the life safety and fire, as a three-family, we are required to sprinkler the building, and the building will be fully sprinklered. With regard to the parking, again, we heard that there was a parking issue, and so that's why we tried to take cars off of the street and creating the off-street parking spaces that we did. And the lot is kind of narrow, so that's why we went with the parking. I mean, we could have proposed a three-family without any parking, which would have exacerbated the issue of not having off-street parking. And so I think the off-street parking was created to try to mitigate the parking issues on that street. Rob, do you want to add anything?
Yes, I do, Derek. Thank you. So a couple other things I want to state on the record. We actually had 3 abutters meetings. One was voluntary, just to introduce ourselves to the community. The owner, Curtis Clemens, is a 3rd-generation owner of this lot. His grandmother owned the house that previously existed on the lot. But we pulled the record and saw, the proof that house was there as early as 1931. There was a 3-family there prior that had burned to the ground. So, I definitely wanted to share that. And we also met with Garrison Trotter twice, and we took all of the feedback received in order to try to present something that we could get support behind. And Garrison Trotter did support us based on the recommendations that we implemented into the plan. So I definitely just wanted to share that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think
questions?
there's some other letters of support on the file as well.
Other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion with approval with BPDA design review and BTD review on the parking.
Is there a second? If there's no second, is there another motion?
I will put forward a motion to deny without prejudice, and my concerns are mainly around the parking arrangement and the 4 tandem stalls. I've never seen 4 stalls, it's typically 2. So I just think it's a sign of maybe trying to accommodate too much on the lot.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
I will second. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Stenbridge.
Yes.
Ms. Wewell.
Yes.
Mr. Valencia.
Yes.
Ms. Panado.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, motion carries.
Okay, thanks, board members.
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good day.
At this point, after we're past the 1 o'clock hour, we'll make a request for any withdrawals or deferrals from the 1 o'clock hour.
Mr. Stembridge, I actually have one at the end of 11:30 that I neglected to inform you. That's the 169 Maverick Street, if that's okay.
Okay, is that okay, Mr. Chavez? I mean,
yes, that's okay, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
what was it?
It's 169.
169.
Page 8, above 1 p.m.
Okay. So that would be case BOA 1475953 with the address of 169 Maverick Street. Would you explain, please?
Sure. For the record, it's Richard Linz, 245 Sumner Street, East Boston, on behalf of the petitioner, Trujillo Development. Madam Chair, this is on for building code only. I believe we have worked out the solution with the building department. There was an issue concerning stairwells that we disagree with the building department on. However, it looks as if the matter is being worked out in the field, but I will not know ultimately until the final inspection is completed. So what I'd like to do is keep the appeal open, but we can probably put it off until the new year as construction continues.
Okay, and Javier doesn't have dates yet, so what would you like to offer, Javier?
We could do December 12th. Attorney Linz, I apologize, we don't have the 2024 schedule right now, but we will by that hearing date. So the solution hasn't been resolved yet. We can defer it into the new year.
Yep, that works for me. Thank you.
May I have a motion?
Motion to approve deferral to December 12th?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stembridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, motion carries. See you then.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman.
Go ahead.
Are you seeking a deferral?
I am. This is Attorney John Barry on behalf of 820 Hyde Park Ave, which is BOA. If you just have one moment.
Mr. Stembridge can read it into the record.
Perfect. Thank you.
That would be case BOA 1473941.
Madam Chair, this is the one I need to recuse from even the deferral.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Collins. We're a 6-member board on this one.
Okay. So again, that would be case BOA 1473941 with the address of 820 Hyde Park Avenue. Would you explain, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is Attorney John D. Barry. Law office is 1154, 1156 Dorchester Ave, Boston, Mass. 02125. This is a project that did complete their community process. Unfortunately, once we selected our ZBA date, I do believe there's some more materials that need to be provided to BTD in the BPDA before we have our hearing regarding just things with the site that may be confusing or that we would like to clarify. I just think this project, this proposal needs a little bit more time working through with the community and working with the city agencies before we go forward with the vote.
Thank you. Javier?
We could do December 12th on this one as well,
We
Madam
love
Chair.
that date now, I guess. Okay. Does that work, Mr. Barry?
That does.
Okay, may I have a motion?
Motion to defer until December
12th.
12th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stembridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
You
Mr.
recuse.
Collins?
You have to
Oh, you
recuse.
recuse, sorry. Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board.
We have one raised hand really quickly. Mario?
Yes?
Are you looking to defer withdrawal case?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm waiting for the cannabis.
Okay.
Hearing. I thought
Any
that
other
was on my screen.
deferrals or withdrawals? Okay, Mr. Stenbridge.
Hearing none, we will return to the 11:30 discussions. And at this point, we have two companion cases. BOA 1368388 with the address of 1222 Washington Street. And along with that, we have case BOA 1518572 with the address of 443 Harrison Avenue, both which are, again, companion cases and cannabis cases. Is the applicant and or the representative present to explain?
Yes, I am, Mr. Stenbridge. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Mike Ross from the law firm of Prince Lobel at One International Place. I'm here with my client, Nikki John. Nikki is the first and so far the only Black woman in Boston who is operating a dispensary, currently in Charlestown. And this application day would represent her second proposed location. If it's all right with you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to give her a quick couple of seconds just to introduce herself to the board, and then I can walk you through the client. Yep. Nikki?
Yep. Hi, Madam Chair and the board. Thank you guys so much for hearing us out today. My name's Nikki John. I'm a longtime Boston resident and Northeastern graduate. That's part of why I chose the South End, having been near the area for so long. And with the long-standing history of diversity, something that I think the city has been really good at championing, and I want to help continue today. So that's part of why I chose this location. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So slide one, this slide is a good slide for us to just sit on a second to set up the case. So this property is within the neighborhood development area subdistrict of the South End Neighborhood Zoning District. So as such, that is a cannabis establishment is a conditional use in this location. There's no buffer zone violation relating to this property. In other words, there's no existing cannabis establishment within 1/2 mile of this property. And if there was, we would be dealing with a variance and not a conditional use permit as we're dealing with today. Interestingly, the current use at the site, an operating restaurant with entertainment use, is a forbidden use within this district. And as such, we are lessening the legal zoning impact associated with this use, as well as creating a lesser use in terms of hours of operation and capacity. As you can see on this site plan here, on the survey, we have a proposal to allow for 23 parking spaces on site, as well as to allow for off-street loading, all to service the existing structure. Next slide, please, Madam Ambassador. So here you'll see a set of 3 plans. The basement floor plan is on the left. It's mostly for staff and storage. The main public-facing floor plan's in the middle. And there's a third small second floor office on the right. And together these spaces comprise approximately 5,700 square feet. So I think we should just zoom into that middle floor plan to go over the general operations of the facility, if that's okay, Madam Ambassador. The main access to the property will, Madam Ambassador, you could just stay on the second slide in the middle, right there. That's perfect. Thank you. So the entrance is on the left of that floor plan, which is Washington Street, an accessible entrance. And there, the Sally Port entrance, meaning that when one door in the pair is open, the other will be locked, will allow for customers to check in and be ID'd at that desk there. Once verified, the customer will be able to enter the facility. There's a robust sales floor with numerous points of sale systems. There's approximately 2,500 square feet in total floor space. As you can see, customers are prohibited from entering restricted areas by the design of the sales floor. Once customers make their purchase, they'll be ID'd a second time. When they've completed their purchase, they'll exit through the same door they entered. As with any cannabis establishment, the plan is to have a robust security system, including 24/7 off-site monitoring which is above and beyond most other businesses in the area. Secure receiving will occur in the rear parking lot and through the rear of the facility in accordance with all CCC regulations. The safe, which is accessible from that secured back of house area, is in the basement along with a dedicated staff area. The next slide, slide 3, Madam Ambassador, could just shows really just how the property situates itself into the site. You'll see a little area labeled as terrace, which is at the top of that floor plan. Today, the restaurant that is open uses this as an outdoor dining area, and it's licensed until midnight. For this proposed dispensary, this is merely a second means of egress. This will not be used for any other purpose. It is not the future site of a cannabis cafe, as some who are opposed are flyering across the neighborhood. We have some renderings that we put together that are in the next few pages that are simply to show context and scale and adherence with the South End, design objectives. They're really just meant to be illustrative only. Customers who do park in the lot will be directed through signage to go to the front of the facility. Hours of operations for the proposed facility would be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Currently, the restaurant is open until 2 a.m., 7 days a week, with outdoor dining until midnight, as I mentioned. I did, Madam Chair, just in my final 60 seconds, I want to flag that I sent you a memo to the members of the board on October 24th. It's a legal memo that includes the traffic memorandum that I forwarded to you. It goes through each of the criteria of why this application meets the legal requirements of a conditional use permit, and I hereby incorporate the memo into this hearing by reference. We do understand there are some people who dislike cannabis, but as referenced in this memo, the law is very clear, and there are 2 recent cases, Madam Chair, in 2022. In a nutshell, those cases stand for the principle that zoning boards must be consistent in which applications they approve and which they disapprove. So here what you have is an existing use where the legal standard is more impactful than what we are proposing zoning-wise, and as well as in hours of operation, where you have ample parking spaces for cars and off-street loading, where you have a traffic report by a licensed traffic engineer stating that there's no significant impact, where you satisfy all the criteria set forth in the zoning code. In these circumstances, the courts have sided with the petitioners. And the fact that they are selling cannabis versus selling food should not be a factor in the decision. Indeed, as I've mentioned, cannabis is actually a lesser use in this current location than restaurant is here today. I'll pause there, Madam Chair, and see if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Two questions from me. Can you confirm the hours again of operation? Do they differ Sunday through Saturday? And also, just can you clarify the parking that you're, I'm assuming, leasing, renting? What is it currently being used for?
The hours of operations are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. The current parking is being used for the restaurant. The number of spaces that I'm not familiar with how the restaurant's leased though, and how they've worked that out. For what we will have is we will have 23 parking spaces assigned to us. There's a balance of spaces that would be remaining, and I would assume that that would be used by the landlord for however he sees fit, consistent with all applicable rules and regulations.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have 2 questions. The first one is there is a restaurant bar right now, the Cathedral Station. What is going to happen with that restaurant?
As far as we know, they are going to close.
There are no relocation plans or anything?
I'm not aware of that. I don't know, Nikki, if you are, but I'm not aware of that.
Okay, I'm asking because we received several emails talking about the restaurant, and some residents are concerned about the bar living, so that's why I'm asking if there is a plan for the restaurant. The second question is for Jeff from the BPDA. I know those are two companion cases. For the building, I think there is a recommendation for approval. For the parking, the recommendation is for denial. So I would like to ask Jeff if you can provide us more information about why those two different recommendations.
We're not opposed to the use, Mr. Valencia. It's just, you know, if parking were to be done, it should be on the same lot. We don't want to give approval for ancillary parking on a lot where the permits go with the land and not with the owner. So we're opposed to the parking on the ancillary, for the ancillary use.
And Mr. Valencia, I can maybe just answer that as well, just to say that, you know, if we were dealing with one lot here, that would obviously not have come up, but these are, I believe, 4 different lots that are collectively assembled as today with the current use that just happen to be in the same ownership of our landlord. It's really up to our landlord to go through the work of assembling those lots and creating those, putting them into a single lot. I would say that for purposes of zoning, lots that are commonly owned do merge under the law in the eyes of the law. However, it was the wisdom of the ISD to cite us for an accessory use, which is also conditional use for the parking, and I have no problem with that, notwithstanding the BPDA's concern. Just, I've been informed that the current use is a at-will lease. And so, you know, there's not a long-term lease in that property. It's a tenancy at will. I can't speak for the landlord, but, you know, my sense is that they're on the back end of whatever they're going to do, regardless of what happens to us. But I do want to use this opportunity to point out that there's support for that forbidden use because it's alcohol and food, and there's opposition for this proposed conditional use because it's cannabis. And I think that's inconsistent under the eyes of the law.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the board?
I have a question, Madam Chair. Yes. Attorney Ross, you mentioned a memo that was sent to the ZBA members. Did other members receive that? I don't have any record of that, and it sounds like it answers some of the items of how the conditional uses or the elements of that are being dealt with. So I guess I'm curious both to other members of the board or to Javier, like, was this some memo that we should have or have others have received that would have helped us in our review? Anyone else see this?
I think I have it from October 25th.
And Mr. Aiken, we get like 10 minutes up here. So sometimes when we have an issue, particularly one that has a lot of questions associated with it, I like to, in practice, just send this information ahead of time as a belt and suspenders approach. But I would absolutely be happy. I'm not going to sit here and read a 5-page memo to you.
Please don't.
Do that, but I could certainly summarize for you how this use lines up with the provisions of the conditional use, if the chair would want me to.
Maybe what I'm going to suggest that if Javier could, I don't know, Mr. Aiken, now that Ms. Wiwa mentioned the date, you can find it. I do see it. If we could proceed, if Javier, you want to send it to him and we can proceed with the public testimony, of which I think there's a lot, that would probably be better use of the time.
Yes,
and then if you still have questions, Mr. Aiken, we can circle back.
Yes, I think Attorney Ross sent it to the ISD Board of Appeal, so the entire board should have it in front of them or have access towards it. But I'll research it. I'll send it to David, Board Member Aiken, while we continue with the hearing.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, let's move to public testimony.
Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Kim Crucioli from the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. Our office would like to defer to the board on this matter. We held the statutory abutters meeting, which was widely attended in January of 2023. The applicant also met multiple times with the East Berkeley Neighborhood Association, which is the host civic organization for the proposal, from which we have received a letter of opposition. At the statutory meeting, overwhelming opposition was shown, and the concerns were mainly regarding the proximity to Pine Street Inn, Peters Park traffic, and the abundance of cannabis proposals popping up throughout the neighborhood. The neighborhood is also very concerned about the loss of Cathedral Station, which is a popular LGBTQ plus safe space in the community, and they feel that a similar establishment should replace it. The last concern from the community came about in the past few weeks. One of the shareholders has backed out. It appears the business is now for sale, which was alarming to abutters and created a lot of confusion. Our office has received over 100 letters and signatures in opposition to the proposal, and we have received 7 letters in support. Again, our office would like to defer to the board at this time. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam of the Chair, members of the board. Ana Calderon from Council President Flink's office. The councilor is opposed to this proposal. This proposal has overwhelmingly neighborhood opposition, and the councilor in Rep. Moran and Senator Collins submitted a joint letter of opposition to the board last week also. The overwhelming opposition is due to the concerns of public safety, quality of life, and how this location is simply inappropriate for a cannabis dispensary, as it is close to a number of daycare centers and schools, and across Peters Park where children congregate. This dispensary is very close to Pine Street Inn, which offers shelter and services to people experiencing homelessness, some of whom are in various stages of recovery. Moreover, the site of Cathedral Station, perhaps the only LGBTQ plus sports bar in the city and a beloved establishment in the neighborhood. Instead of a dispensary, there is a strong desire for this location to have a business that's similar to Cathedral Station, especially when we see LGBTQ plus rights being under attack. There are also concerns recently about how the proponent may be selling this dispensary if it is approved under the city's cannabis equity program, which in contrary to the spirit of the program and using the program as a loophole for financial gains instead of advancing diversity and equity in our cannabis industry. There are many concerns about this proposal, and this proposal has had overwhelmingly opposition since the beginning, and the councilor hopes that the board will deny this application. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Paul Sullivan for City Council at Large, Michael Flaherty, echoing the sentiments of Council President Flynn's office and citing the overwhelming opposition we received through our office, through emails, written letters, in opposition to this proposal. The councilor would like to go on record in opposition.
Okay. And I'm suspecting a lot of public testimony, so I would encourage people to please be brief and try not to be repetitive. I think your colleagues in ONS and Councilor Flynn's office summarized a lot of the opposition that we received via email.
Yes, thanks. Thanks very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, and thank you to the hardworking members of the ZBA board for hearing my testimony, and I thank you for your service. Again, my name is John Moran. I'm the state representative for the 9th Suffolk District, and my district includes 1222 Washington and much of the surrounding area of the South End. Today, I'm representing my views as well as those of my constituents who are here today to testify, and I'll be quick so they can get to it. 1222 Washington Street, as you know, is currently the home to Cathedral Station. It's a neighborhood bar, and more importantly, a safe place for LGBTQ plus people like myself and all other people in walks of life. As the first openly gay person to hold this district seat, the loss of yet another center of our culture would be tragic. As many of my constituents have written to me, in the midst of increasing assaults on our LGBTQ plus community across this country, the timing could not be worse to lose yet another gathering place here in Boston. I have 3 additional observations that lead me to not support this application. First, as others have said, and as stated with my colleagues, Senator Collins and Councilor Flynn, the proximity to Peters Park, which is just a crosswalk away, home to Little Leaguers in the spring, to children throughout the year and families throughout the year, is a very troubling place to bring a cannabis shop. In addition, I've heard from local schools, including cathedral, churches, and daycare centers are in close proximity to this proposed location. And I join them in strongly encouraging the applicant to find a more suitable spot. I'm also concerned to the proximity to the closest cannabis shop, which Attorney Ross you must be using creative measurements because there are at least 2 other cannabis approved shops within a half mile, and I don't care what type of measurement you take, there's 2 other ones in close proximity. And finally, I want to address the deal aspect of this application, which sickens me. Besides the South End Back Bay area, my district includes much of Lower Roxbury, Newmarket, and the Polish Triangle. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm a champion of equality, and as a representative to an extremely diverse district, I'm widely aware of the wealth gap between the Black and brown residents and white residents in my district, and I'm actively working to better address this gap. As such, I think the Boston Cannabis Equity Program is well intended and should be one way to address wealth disparities. However, I'm deeply dismayed at the evidence presented to me in writing that in this case, the equity applicant wishes to move ahead with this application in the absence of a 49% stakeholder who dropped out, and regardless of who ends up being that 49% person, wishes to cash out within 2 years. According to the deal sheet which I was presented with, the equity applicant wishes to come away with a profit nearing $5 million should they be able to find a buyer. I submit to you that this is not the intent of the equity program, and I ask you that you dismiss this application on this evidence alone. For these reasons, I strongly object to this application, and I humbly ask the board to vote against this approval, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, any other elected official offices before we get to the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to Raul, then I'll go to Doug. Can you please just help to give us new information and let us know if you're briefly in support opposition to the public?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of raised hands, so please be brief and respectful to others who want to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Raul Gonzalez at 80 West Dedham, and I am in opposition. Other than what's been already mentioned, I do want to highlight that this property was selected for purchase primarily because of its ample parking space for a place that could sell edibles and tinctures that could be consumed quickly. This is across the street, as mentioned earlier, from a Little League park and strategically located by multiple crosswalks. Furthermore, it is just 3 blocks away from Cathedral Middle and High School. The presence of a marijuana dispensary in such close proximity to an educational institution raises significant concerns about the potential exposure of students to cannabis. Additionally, the property is across the street from the South of Washington SOWA outdoor farmer and artist market, which are held every weekend during the spring, summer, and fall. The introduction of a dispensary nearby may lead to conflicts and discomfort for market goers. Furthermore, it is essential to consider the broader implications of locating a marijuana dispensary at Cathedral Station. The proposed dispensary would be less than a 15-minute walk from Boston Medical Center and the tent city at Mass and Cass, which has long attracted a large number of people struggling with houselessness and drug addiction. Given the challenges and vulnerabilities already present in this area, introducing a dispensary may inadvertently exacerbate existing issues related to substance abuse and homelessness. It is crucial to prioritize the well-being and safety of both local residents and those in need of support services. In light of these concerns and the potential negative impact, I strongly urge against designating Cathedral Station as a dispensary. And lastly, I just will agree that this would be the loss of another LGBTQIA place within the city, with Machine, Paradise, and the Eagle all shuttering within the last 5 years alone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, hi, Doug Rudish, 1166 Washington Street. The applicant has lost their financing. I can't imagine the ZBA can approve an applicant which approval adversely affects anyone else within a half-mile buffer zone who may want to apply to open a facility when they cannot show financial backing sufficient to actually open the current facility. Number 2, how can the ZBA approve anything not knowing what the entity and who the owners will ultimately be? To clarify, there's a 2-year buyout option for the equity applicant in the transaction. Per code, obviously what Mike Ross submitted to you was submitted with bias in favor of the client, but code clearly states the use will not adversely affect the neighborhood. You have overwhelming opposition to this, which is a clear indication of adverse effect, and the adverse effects should be obvious, included being in direct proximity to Peters Park, where children congregate, and there's a Little League program for underprivileged children. I was under the impression that the Cannabis Board approves an entity in its entirety, which includes the financial backers that may ultimately own the property. Given again that it is up for sale now for $5 million, where the applicant is just trying to flip the license as opposed to operate the facility. Given the fact that the entity has changed, it is no longer what the Cannabis Board has approved. I also believe it may actually be within a half-mile buffer zone of the dispensary at 591 Albany Street. The engineering submission from the applicant states it is 25 feet away. Public source data actually shows a walking distance of slightly within a half a mile and a straight line distance of 1,900 feet. Neither is close to their measurements. The engineering report also indicates they measured from the center of each location instead of from the nearest lot line of each location. They also admitted from their submission Cathedral High School, which is right down the street, while including schools that are not close for some reason, and that seems odd. Also, this is the last large undeveloped site in the neighborhood. The dispensary will stop development of that property and the adjoining Neon building, which might be 100,000 square feet of developable space, include denser multi-story property with more housing and retail, including potentially Cathedral Station, which is much more beneficial to the immediate area.
Thank you. Can you please wrap up? Please wrap up, sir.
City in terms of quality of life and tax collections, and also it is not clear that Cathedral Station is going away. It could be operated by the continuing owner or by new investors.
Thank you. Jessica?
Okay, Jonathan?
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please be brief and state your support or opposition.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for letting me talk. My name is Jonathan Marks. I'm a trustee at 1140 Washington Street, just down the street. My building is in opposition to this location for the following. The proposed location is directly in between the city's largest homeless shelter, the Pine Street Inn, and Peters Park, home to a Little League field and children's playground. Peters Park faces the shop. The exposure to children and families would be extreme and detrimental to the community. There are hundreds of children in the park at any given day, especially during Little League season. This location is at an epicenter of children's activities and facilities, including schools. There's an existing drug problem in Peters Park directly across the street. Daily, this community witnesses people illegally smoking and getting high in Peters Park, many of whom are PSI residents. Anyone who lives here can corroborate this. They sit within 50 steps of the proposed location. Our help is needed rather than to continue to take advantage of that. Our elected officials are all against. Ed Flynn, John Moran, thank you for your testimony. The Neighborhood Association and Business Associations of the South End are all against. Additionally, I agree with all the comments about the distance. I can't find any measurable distance that's more than 0.5 miles. I'm questioning the applicant's calculations. I highly recommend this board look closely into the actual measurement and legality of the applicant. Denying this location would help promote the best interests of our community, our city, our children. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jessica, are there other raised hands?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Mario?
And how many? Because we probably can't get to all of them.
Oh, Mario?
So over 12. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, we're not going to get to all of them, so people need to maybe put in the chat too. Please go.
Okay, this is Mario. I'm a resident and a developer in the area, largely responsible for the development of the art community known as SOA. But I'm not going to go through all the other stuff everybody said because it was actually quite eloquent. But I will say, in my 6 decades of doing this and going to neighborhood meetings, I have never seen a neighborhood so instinct against something. It's overwhelming. From Cathedral, the Cathedral of New England, Cathedral High School, your councils, your state reps, your neighborhood association, your daycare centers, even the dogs at Peters Park took a vote, and they don't want this. So why are we even having this discussion? If these people were concerned about the neighborhood, they would listen to the neighborhood and withdraw their application. But unfortunately, and my lawyer submitted evidence that this lady has been trying to sell her interest, and it's been advertised. And interestingly, the ad was just taken down the last day, probably because maybe it was discovered that we discovered it. And we submitted that through my lawyer to the board, showing her yesterday, showing that she, in fact, without investing any money, was looking for a $2 million paycheck for her interest without having invested a nickel. I'm done.
Thank you.
Can we keep going, Madam Chair?
Two more.
Okay, go to Dr. Jasmine Munoz and then Nancy Radford. Jasmine?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Covarrubias Munoz. I am a resident of 1200 Washington Street in the South End. Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, as a resident of Laconia Lofts, mother of a 2-year-old and a physician, I oppose the cannabis dispensary. I am also against the use of this space for both indoor and outdoor marijuana cafe. While they contend that the space will not include a cannabis cafe, there is no guarantee that this will not happen. The outdoor cafe would face all of our windows, which means we would be exposed to secondhand smoke. I think we can all look to Amsterdam, Netherlands as an example of why we should not support this establishment. We should also not disregard the dangers of secondhand smoke that this establishment would impose on our community. While Amsterdam's coffee shops have been a prominent part of the city's culture for decades, there has been ongoing debate and criticism surrounding their existence. Critics and opponents of marijuana cafes in Amsterdam have raised several concerns and have provided evidence to support their arguments. So public health concerns, increased use among youth. Critics argue that the presence of coffee shops and dispensaries make it easier for young people to access and use marijuana, potentially leading to an increase in cannabis use among adolescents. Mental health effects. Some studies suggest a link between cannabis use, particularly at a young age, and negative mental health outcomes, including an increased risk of anxiety, depression, and psychosis. Critics argue that the easy availability of marijuana in dispensaries or cafes may contribute to these issues. Public safety and nuisance. Tourist attraction. Amsterdam's coffee shops and dispensaries often attract tourists, leading to concerns about overcrowding, noise, and unruly behavior in certain neighborhoods. Drug tourism. Critics contend that Amsterdam's coffee shops culture encourages drug tourism, with individuals traveling to the city primarily for the purpose of consuming marijuana. This can create challenges for law enforcement and local communities.
Can you please wrap up, Ms. Munoz?
Yep. Respiratory issues and basically cognitive and behavioral effects on children who are developing their brain. So I'm just going to make that short. In essence, I'm gravely in opposition of this dispensary, and if the goal is to provide something for the community, this is not it. Thank you for your time.
Nancy?
Hi, this is Nancy. I reside at 1313 Washington Street. Joan Atanasi and I collected 177 signatures in 1 week for a petition opposing the cannabis dispensary at 1222 Washington Street. These signatures were collected in the dog park, in the children's playground in Peters Park, as well as Waltham Street Daycare Center and the surrounding neighborhood. Neighbors are overwhelmingly opposed to the dispensary directly across from Peters Park, with a playground, softball field with Little League teams. It's also located less than a quarter mile from Pine Street Inn and close to the Cathedral High School and 2 daycare centers. The people I spoke to felt the dispensary would interfere with the health, safety, and the community of our neighborhood. There are other dispensaries very close by, and this one should not be located in a residential neighborhood across from a community park. I was also surprised that the equity applicant proposed business has been up for sale since August. And it could be
Any other new information to add, Ms. Radford? We have heard this information before.
It could be sold to a non-equity applicant. I'm wondering how that could be legal. I, along with the others who have signed the petition, strongly oppose this location. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jessica, I do see one comment about someone in support, so just to give them an opportunity to speak, Jennifer, I think it was Jennifer Grella or something, and then you can circle back to the applicant.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jennifer. I sent a request to unmute you.
Can you hear me? Can you see me? Hi.
Please state your address as well for the record.
Oh, so Jennifer Grella, I live at 481 Harrison Avenue. I don't know why I don't see myself, but it doesn't matter. I submitted a detailed letter of support to the ZBA a while ago, but I wanted an opportunity to speak here in support. I've lived in the South End since 1988 in all different corners. My husband and I raised 2 sons here, and now we're empty nesters just across Perry Street from the proposed site of the dispensary. The values espoused by the South End community have always aligned perfectly with our own, and we are deeply committed to the social and economic success of our neighborhood. We have attended 3 presentations by the owners and feel that they are serious professional and responsible business operators. We believe that having Boston Garden as a neighbor would increase pedestrian traffic and tax revenues. The owners have committed to increasing area lighting, security, and litter removal. They've also committed to improving the aesthetics of the building, including visibility to the interior, and preventing customer lines from forming on the sidewalk. Most importantly, they have committed to significant hyper-local neighborhood investment and involvement, which is more than most developers of large commercial real estate projects have done. Private cannabis purchase and use is legal in Massachusetts. We are all exposed to it routinely. There are no other recreational cannabis shops in the South End at this time. There is one medicinal dispensary on Albany Street, which is actually closer to Mass and Cass than this one would be. It is our contention that the objections to locating this business in our neighborhood amount to NIMBYism at its worst. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the folks who expressed their position in the chat. We appreciate that. Mr. Ross, you've heard a lot of feedback, and I'm sure you've heard some of it before. I'm going to say the buyout piece is new to me, as well as obviously that information in general. Can you speak to that first?
Sure. So the ownership is as exactly as the Boston Cannabis Board approved it, with Ms. John being the 51% owner. She had always had a partner who was in the 49% position. The mere fact that the neighbors or opponents may or may have not seen a message that the 49% owner was seeking to sell his share, which he has every right to do, has no bearing on whether or not this is an okay error for the zoning case. That is a matter that the Boston Cannabis Board has to adjudicate. And if there's a sale of that 49% interest, we would have to go back to the Boston Cannabis Board, but not the Zoning Board of Appeal, in order to change the beneficial ownership of the entity. But the 51% controlling share, as according to the Boston Cannabis Board regulations, would still remain with Ms. John, who is a social equity applicant and approved Boston equity applicant. And therefore, as the controlling member of this entity, she would remain in place. There actually is no provision to strip out the 51% owner in the Boston Cannabis Board today, which is actually a subject of controversy for some of the social equity applicants who are holding on to entities and having trouble raising funds. But in any case, there is no way to remove that 51% ownership today at the Boston Cannabis Board. It only allows you to remove up to 49% of whoever that investor component is. It's worth noting 2 things. One, that Mrs. John's Charlestown place, which has been in business for 13 months, is currently operating with her at the helm in the same ownership position. And number 2, no other conversation about ownership came up in any other conversation, at least for what I've been listening to for the last 2 hours on this call. And the fact that they're asking it for this one entity, as opposed to all the other entities that came before you, really goes to the bias associated with cannabis. I would like to address the ownership of the Cathedral Station, the bar that's in place. According to the landlord, the owner of Cathedral Station is retiring. That's what was communicated to us. But even still, it's not the responsibility of this applicant to figure out what is happening with the previous use, just like none of the other people coming before you had to respond to that. In terms of Washington Street being across the street from the park or near the Pine Street Inn, Washington Street is a 4-lane, busy trafficked road with 2 lanes of parking, so a total of 6 lanes between us, with not even a crossing area until further down the road itself. We do have an example of what it's like to have a cannabis dispensary open near an area where there's significant drug use. And that was 50 Clapp Street, which was approved by this board, and it's in Dorchester, and it is the closest dispensary to Mass and Cass, so-called Mass and Cass. And it's very close to what we see there. I would say it's about half a mile, maybe a little bit more. And in that circumstances, there have been no issues that I know of, and I was their counsel that brought it through. But you know, I also just happen to know there's been no additional issues as it relates to that Mass and Cass element. In terms of the buffer zone question that has come up a few times in the comments, you know, and I'll put aside the comment that was made about me that I would take some sort of creative license to misrepresent something before this board, putting my license in jeopardy, which I would never do that, and nor is that the kind of person that I am. The Boston Cannabis Board authenticated the half-mile buffer. Your sister agency, not me, they provided verification that we are not within half a mile of either the medical dispensary that's down the road or a future approved dispensary. I guess I would close by saying this. The cafe, there is no such thing as a consumption cafe. However, if it would, you know, add suspenders and belt to the concerns that were raised here, if the board would want to add a proviso that under no circumstances can this ever become a cafe in the event such a cafe becomes legal, that would essentially force us to come back to the board and explain to you why that is the case. We would be absolutely open to that type of proviso, and it would give additional assurances. But I do stand by the comments that the neighbor Jennifer Grella said. There's always been a lot of concern from those who are opposed, especially in a dense area. But the people who of this ward and precinct voted overwhelmingly, all the way back in 2016, to allow for cannabis to be in Boston. They voted overwhelmingly. And so, of course, 20 people who are opposed, who voted on the other side, will gather here and make their opposition known. But be it known that all the voters of this precinct voted to support it. And I think that should be the only time we consider kind of the popularity contest piece of this whole process, which is steeped not in whether or not people like the use, but whether or not the use is legally allowed in the space, which I submit it is.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? I know it's a lot to digest. I can't see you guys, but I don't hear any questions. Okay, in the absence of any further questions, I'm going to ask for a motion.
I will make a motion to approve. I understand all the testimony, and you know, it's testimony that we hear almost in every cannabis case that we consider. We typically defer to the Cannabis Board. They're the experts. They're running this program. It's not allowed use, which is why it comes before us. But we typically do defer to the Cannabis Board on their recommendations. So for that reason, I make a motion to approve in accordance with the BPDA's recommendation.
Javier, is the parking, should we be looking at that separately or together?
You can look at that together. If you approve the project, it could be for 1222 Washington and then 443 Harrison. It's how the board wants to address it in general.
Well, I'll put that to Ms. Panado.
I feel like they're two separate matters, so I'm happy to make a motion to approve 1222 Washington Street, the first case.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes, and the reason I'm voting is focusing solely on the zoning issues and the conditional use criteria, and just echoing Ms. Panado's comments as well. That's what's in front of us.
Mr. Valencia? You're muted, Mr. Valencia.
No, and the reason is this. This board has supported most of the cannabis applications in the past. This time, I think the location is different. There is the park across the street. There is this situation with the Cathedral Bar Restaurant that is still to be determined. And for that reason, I will vote no at this moment.
Ms. Panado?
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
No, I don't feel that the bar has been met for a conditional use permit during this process. I appreciate the separating out of the Cathedral Station and the other ownership issues, but my vote is no.
The chair also votes no. The motion does not carry. Is there a second motion?
Motion to deny without prejudice.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
I'm gonna vote no.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
No.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
The chair also votes yes. The motion carries.
Madam Chair, just
Yes.
to clarify, as we separated before for 1222 Washington, is that the same for 443 Harrison Avenue? For a denial without prejudice?
Well, Ms. Panado's motion did not include that, so it sounds like we need a separate motion on that one.
The denial was, who was it, Board Member Aiken, I believe?
Oh, right.
Valencia, I'm sorry, Valencia.
Oh, yeah.
So
right,
can I just?
Do you want to include that?
Yes, I want to include the two cases for this motion.
So I need a new vote then. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Stenbridge?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Wewell?
No for the two motions.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
No.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
So we will now continue. Good. And the next two cases, two companion cases, are case BOA 1476876, the address of 246 Hall Street. And along with that, we have case BOA 1476878 at the same address of 246 Hall Street. Is the applicant and or the representative present to explain to the board?
Yes, good afternoon again, Madam Chair, members of the board. Richard Lins with the business address of 245 Sumner Street in East Boston. On behalf of the petitioner, with me is Eric Zackerson, who is our project architect. Madam Chair, I know we're getting late in the day, and I'll try to be as brief but as thorough as possible. If we could scroll down to slide 6, that is probably a good place to start. While the ambassador's moving the slides, let me give a quick overview. This is an existing 5,000 square foot vacant lot located in the Flats area of East Boston. This section of Harv Street has seen a significant amount of new development, and we're proposing to redevelop this site with a 9-unit multifamily residential with 8 parking spaces. One item that's not included in the, I think in the description, is that we've also agreed to designate one of these units under the city's IDP program, even though that is not required. So if we could just go to slide 6, Madam Ambassador, that would be probably a good place to start for an overview. So a couple of things just to know about this lot, and the reason I included this slide is to show what the surrounding context is. This is, for all intents and purposes, very similar to a corner lot condition, even though we're one lot in from the corner. But as you can see, the buildings located to the left side of the screen are actually on a private way that back up to our lot. The buildings towards the top of the screen are on Marion Street, which also back up to the lot, which makes our lot sort of the outlier for purposes of how we would orient our building. And looking at this and talking with the community, you know, having parking at the lower level as well as an adaptable, accessible unit appear to make more sense than trying to create a courtyard condition that would sort of be you know, the center of all of the backs of all these properties. So if we jump down to our plot plan, we have that at slide 17, I believe. Let's stop. Let's go back here for 1 second. I apologize. If we go back to slide 10, just to show some of the examples in and around, starting right here. So just as I mentioned, there is a number of projects that have been recently completed or under construction on this block of Howard Street. They're all very similar to the layout and design that we're proposing for our project here at 246. You can see here 227 Harv. That's a 4-story building with the ground level garage. We have a similar project at 216 Harv. We jump down further. Next slide, please. Other projects completed at 195, 197, and 194. Again, these are all 4-story buildings, all typically with the lower level garage occupying the first level as well as some living space, and very similar to our proposal, what we're proposing at 246. If we can jump down to the proposed plot at slide 17, please. That's a good place to stop. So as I mentioned, we do have this condition where the backs of all of those homes along Marion Street as well as that private way back up to our site, making our site somewhat like a corner lot condition. As you can see, we do set back our building on both sides at least 3 feet so that we're allowed to have openings and windows. We do set our building back in the rear at about 3 feet, but again, this is a condition that's very similar to what we have for buildings that are located directly behind our site. As we move up our building, we do set our building back in a bit. We do introduce some rear decks and balconies, but pretty much the entire footprint at the bottoms to allow for 1 adaptable unit as well as 8 parking spaces. We can jump to the next slide. That'll show us the, I believe, the first floor layout. Next slide, please. Okay. So as you can see here, we do enter our garage on the right side of our building. We have the 8 parking spaces in the enclosed garage, and then unit 1, which is a 1-bedroom, about 690 square foot unit. And as I said, that would be available for to be made adaptable as a group 2 unit. The rest of the units are all 2-bed as we go up the building for levels 2 and 3. And levels 3 and 4 actually have 5-level units where the units are anywhere from 1,100 to 1,500 square feet in total. We are proposing to designate one of the 2-bedroom, 2-bath units for IDP. This is intended for home ownership. So the AMI that would apply to that particular unit would be 80% maximum. With respect to the relief that we need for this, you can probably jump back to the render. If you go back up 2 slides, it's probably a good place to stop. Yeah, perfect. No, for next slide. Perfect. So the relief that's necessary, because this is currently in the 3F 2000 district, I'm sure as the board is aware, we are undergoing a transition for new zoning for the area. Although I did review the draft map for this area, it is very close to the line for what is proposed as multifamily residential. So MFR would actually allow this use under new zoning, although it is prohibited currently under Article 53. But as I mentioned, the context for this area is predominantly multifamily for the new development, new construction that is occurring. We do meet the current minimum lot size, and we'll meet the lot size under new zoning, as well as the lot width. Our side yards currently proposed exceed the requirements under Article 53, so 2.5 is the minimum requirement currently. We have an existing parking lot located to our left that's associated with an auto repair facility located in the street behind us. And then we do have some setback from the rear portion of the buildings that are located to our right along Marion Street. We do have our front yard. We're going to propose to set that at a modal setback, which is consistent with the setbacks of all new buildings and existing buildings on that side of Harp Street. We do include some outdoor balcony space for each of the units. One of the things that we did eliminate, however, was the roof deck, and that was in response to comments that we did hear through community process, as well as some of the arrangements for how we might deal with accessing the roof. We are requesting building code relief before the board today. That was originally for the roof deck, as well as some other stairwell modifications. It appears that we're not going to require that building code relief, so we're not going to move forward on that portion of the petition based upon the changes that we made. With respect to parking, we are providing one space for each of the units, the market rate units. We typically do not include a parking space for those units that are designated for IDP in this type of project. This property is located less than 1/8 of a mile from the entrance to Airport T Station. As you walk down Marion Street, it's a short 2-block walk into the Bremen Street Park, so there are a number of area amenities as well that are available. With that, I will pause and ask if there are any questions of the board or address any comments that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lenz. Questions from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go to public testimony.
I'm going to ask,
Yes.
It appears that this is pretty dense and not really compliant with the plan for East Boston. I think there's a draft that came out in September. And so can you address that? I think that plan would allow up to 6 units, and it would reduce your height to 4 stories. So can you just address why such a dense development given the current planning efforts?
Yes, understood. So this was obviously in process before the recommendations came out for the plan, but handling the number of cases I do handle in East Boston, I try to stay at least up to speed on what the planning recommendations were headed towards. At the time we submitted this and the modifications that we made, the norm for this area, the discussion for the norm for this area was 4 stories. And that's why we had proposed this as a 4-story building. And as I showed you, that was consistent with a number of the other projects that the board had approved and the BPDA had recommended for this block. As for the density, I do understand this is a little bit more dense than what the plan contemplates. But as I said in previous presentations, it's hard for the plan to be one size fits all when you look at lots such as this. Mid-block lots, that I do agree that less density is preferred in the mid-block areas, but this being so close to the corner and then sort of enveloped by the surrounding properties that really don't have the rear yards that typically would be requested on a building of this size, made this a little bit easier to try to address the concerns of the neighbor parking at the lower level. That's one of the reasons why we have the footprint that we do. We feel that the having any further setback in the rear would only create sort of this fishbowl effect, if you will, for the building and for the building's occupants. And it was probably better used not only for square footage, but for the parking as well that we were proposing. And that's one of the reasons for the trade-off, and we understand in the plan that, certainly, regulations or our ability to exceed what the plan's recommendations are can be exchanged for additional community benefits. And that's one of the reasons we're doing the voluntary IDP at 80%.
And then can we just hear from the BPDA on their recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We recommended denial without prejudice on this just because of the extensive violations that go along with this project. It's just excessive in our minds, so that's our reasoning for denial without prejudice. Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Can I just add a comment, Madam Chair? I believe in the extensive violations are in the current zoning. The current zoning is 3F2000. Any of those projects that I showed as previous examples have the same violations that were being contemplated. So until a new plan is adopted, I don't know that this, I don't know that the extent of the violations would be the same, including the height of the building. I think 4 stories, especially with an IDP unit, is considered to be appropriate for this area.
Thank you, Mr. Lenz. May I have public testimony, please?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Melavia Gomez with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. ONS hosted an abutters meeting for this project on March 22nd, 2023. There was one abutter present who shared concerns about the runoff water and parking. The applicant then met with the Maverick Central Neighborhood Association in April, and the group voted to support for the project, or in support of the project. At this time, our office would like to defer judgment to the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Elaine Donovan with Council Coletta's office. The council would like to go on record in support at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No raised hands.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Christian Simonelli, Boston Groundwater Trust, and we have both G-card letters from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Simonelli.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Paul Sullivan, City Council at Large, Michael Flaherty, council on record in support.
Thank you. Any other follow-up questions from the board? With that, may I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Katie.
No, go ahead, I'll second it.
Go ahead, Mr. Valencia, it's yours.
Thank you. Motion to approve with BPDA review.
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Pinato?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, motion carries. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
At this point, we'll move into the 1 p.m. hearing. First, we have case BOA 1448596, is the address of 21R Druid Street. Is the applicant and or their representative present to explain to the board?
Yes, good afternoon, Mrs. Stenbridge. You caught me off guard. This is Attorney Joseph Feaster from getting my law firm from Dane Torpy, 175 Federal Street in Boston. I was almost going to say my old law firm.
It's been a long day, sir.
Oh, no, well, I can see that is, and I'm going to try to make it short, Madam Chair, and I'm glad that you saved the easy cases for last. I've been listening to your earlier deliberations. I represent the applicant, Tyrone and Renee Kendall. They are seeking in this, and they live at 21 Druid Street, have lived there for 29 years. It's a single-family home with a garage at the rear of the property, or a single-car garage. They have been parking a number of vehicles on adjacent to the house on a common driveway, which has been shared with their neighbor. But they are looking at this point in time to construct, because they have adequate and sufficient rear yard, in order to construct a 3-car garage with some storage space as well. We have had an abutters meeting, and there's been no opposition registered to my knowledge. We had a meeting with the Dorchester Lower Mill Civic Association, and the board has a letter of support. And in fact, the board has in its record a petition signed by 17 abutters in support of this. And as well, the applicant has met with the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Association, and I've not received zoning committee, and I've not received any notice from them of any opposition to this proposal. So with that, I would like to be, if he is not already a presenter or listed as presenter to speak, Mr. Montron, Silas Montron should be, and he was the person who will be constructing this and will walk through the plans.
I just sent a request to make you a panelist, Silas. Once you become a panelist, please unmute yourself.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of board. My name is Silas Montrand. As we can see on the drawings, so we planning to demo 1-car garage and build a 3-car garage. The height from the car garage, so the only problem we have was the height is a little above, and
why don't you advance the next slide?
Yes, if you can go down a little bit. Next slide. So the dimension, this new car garage is 36 by 25. It's going to have a two doors car garage, and
next slide, please. Mr. Montron, you got to direct them as to the ones you want to speak to. Next slide.
So what's the height, the 25 or the 36?
The height right now is 21.6. That's the
current height, and what are you proposing?
The current is 12, and we propose in 21.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And the dimension of the proposed right now is 36 by 25. On the drawings, it's just like the specification, and it's just like it's going to be a storage on top. So the existing one already.
Okay, I'm going to help Mr. Montron. Can you advance the slide, please? Could you advance the next slide, please? Okay, now you can speak about the dimensions.
Okay, so on the new dimensions of this one, it has like I said, it's 36 by 25. We're gonna add a 2-car garage, and the step back from the neighbors, we have a step back from on the side. It's 17 feet. That one is it'll be easier if we added like a plot plan. I don't know if we can get access.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide, I don't see the plot plan here, but maybe it'll come up. Next slide. There it is, there we go.
Exactly. If you can expand it. So on that one, we can see we are on the right side, we're looking on the front of the building, we are 17 feet away from the neighbor's lot. And on the left side, we are 7 feet away from the neighbor's lot. And from the back, we are 15 feet away from the lot. So if we have any questions, go ahead.
Is the main structure is only one level? The main residence? Is that correct?
Ms. Dong is not a residence in terms of the main. There is the garage structure is only one level, yes, and above that is just storage space.
Right, so you're proposing like a second story, or is this still considered?
Well, I'm not sure how you would describe it. Why don't we go back? We just have to go back and show you in terms of the drawing. All it is storage space above that. If you want to see the drawing which shows the side elevations and all of that.
How much space is that occupying, the storage that you want? Like square footage, roughly?
That is, if I'm reading the plan correctly, we're talking about the area on that is about 12 feet.
Because one of the feedback, I mean, I can let Mr. Hampton speak for yourself if you want. Do you want to weigh in, Mr. Hampton?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We recommended denial without prejudice on this, only because when you look at this garage, it almost takes up the exact same footprint as the one family in front. The garage is 900 square feet. I think the one family house is just over 1,200. So we're not opposed to a garage, but we're opposed to one that's 23 feet in height and has a 900 square foot footprint. So I think the appellant should just be able to put, they want to knock down their garage, you know, there are provisions in the code where it says it can't be higher than 15 feet. And that's what we're recommending. So we're recommending denial without prejudice and that they conform to the setback requirements in the zoning that allows them to go up to 15 feet.
Okay, thank
Now,
you.
yes, may I respond to that, Ms. Dong? I understand what what is mentioned from the BPDA in terms of its objection. I think we're talking, while that may be so, and the reason why we are seeking this variance is because of this not being obtrusive to any of the residents, any of the neighbors, either at the rear or at the front. This property slopes down, and this was a matter of for storage spaces. If there is a concern that it might be used for other uses, that's definitely not the intention of my client or it's evident as it exists here. My sense is that I understand what's being proposed by the BPDA, but I would argue that this particular structure is not obtrusive to the neighborhood, either or any of the abutters. So again, I would like to have the board consider this project as it is, or you know, if need be, if there's going to be a denial of this, then I would take the denial without prejudice.
Thank you. Other questions from the board?
I mean, I'm just curious why they need so much parking for a single-family home.
Well, my client is a plumber, and he also has, you know, some very nice vehicles that right now, as a result, they have to store them away. They put them away during the winter time. This provided an opportunity because the previous garage was a single garage and very, very small. This really allows them to be able to store his vehicles on this property as opposed to, and as well, free up some spaces that are on the street. If you travel Druid Street, it's traffic on both ways, and the parking can be limited, particularly as you look at it in the evening. So what this was provided was an off-street opportunity as well for the appellants in order to do that. And one of the other reasons is that because of the types of vehicles that they have and the fact that they do store them for the winter, they just wanted to be able to do it economically and otherwise, since they had this property at this location, this phenomenon.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
I have one question just to clarify something. So my understanding is that, you know, accessory buildings are accessory to the principal building on site. So I do understand the recommendation that, you know, this is sort of almost as large. So can you talk to that relationship between the two buildings and specifically which one is taller in terms of feet in the measurement?
Okay, you wanted to know which one was taller in terms of the
Yes, the height. I tried asking that earlier, but I don't think you got that question. So yes.
Well, we have the height for this particular structure here, but as I said, this slopes down. Mr. Montron, do you have the heights for the main building?
Yeah, so the main building is roughly around like 26 feet, and the one we're proposing is 21.6.
Any other questions, Ms. Weaver?
No.
Okay. Can we have public testimony?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, Connor Newman with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. At this time, the Mayor's Office would like to defer to the judgment of this board. Our office conducted a butters meeting on June 13th. The applicant then went on to meet with the Lower Mill Civic Association, which offered their support for this proposal. We've also received 1 letter of support, 0 letters of opposition. And with that, we'll defer to the board at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Ayomide Olumuyiwa from the Office of City Councilor Brian Worrell. In regards to 21 Druid Street, We received letters of support from both the River Street Civic and the Lower Mill Civic, and in following that trend, the council would like to offer his support for this.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Paul Sullivan for City Council at Large, Michael Flaherty. Council can go on record in support.
No additional raised hands.
Okay. With that, may I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I was going to make a motion to approve with a proviso that the height of the garage be limited to 15 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Stenbridge?
No.
Ms. sorry, go ahead.
That, I don't feel the height is too far out of place. That's basically it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
Chair also votes yes, the motion carries. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and the board.
Next, we have case BOA 152-1923 with the address of 41 Ocean Street. Is the applicant and/or their representative present to explain
Yes,
to the board?
Yes, Mr. Secretary. Madam Chair, members of the board, Attorney Ryan Spitz with Adams and Moranci, business address of 168 H Street, first floor, South Boston. Joining me today is Chris Drew from 686 Architects. So I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible for you all. So this is a previous approval back on March 28, 2023 that was approved from this board regarding a change of occupancy from 2 units to 3 units. On approximately about October 7, 2022, we received an updated refusal letter which had the use violation that was factored into that updated. For some reason, it was inadvertently left off what was advertised, so we're here trying to correct that issue today. The second violation that we do have on here that we're trying to correct was the limitation of off-street parking area. Further conversations were had with Bob D'Amico, who suggested pushing back the actual parking closer to the side lot line, which created the violation for being less than 5 feet from the lot line. So again, that was due to the recommendation of Bob D'Amico. So we're here today just trying to rectify those 2 issues that were inadvertently missing from the advertisement. Nothing else has changed from these plans. So at this point in time, I'm going to pause for any questions or comments from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, I'm going to open it up to public testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Ross Cochran with the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services. The proponent has completed their community process at this time. Our office held a butters meeting in November of 2022. There were the butters that were in support of that meeting, as well as the civic group who is in full support of this project as well, because it already passed, but we're just trying to rectify the things that changed on the refusal letter now. We'd like to defer to the judgment of this board. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have no additional raised hands. Okay.
Okay, last call for questions from the board. Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a motion.
Make the motion to approve with design review by the EDA extension to the front facade.
Jeffrey just said that.
No.
Did you just say no?
Oh, no, you said no. You don't want that. What you would
I heard no,
right?
so try again.
Do a motion to approve.
Okay. is there a
Second.
Okay, Mr. Stenbridge.
Yeah.
Ms. Wewell.
Yes.
Mr. Valencia.
Yes.
Ms. Panado.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Aiken.
Yes.
Chair also votes yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is Julie Ryan from City Councilor Frank Baker's office. The phone had rang while you guys were giving testimony, so I just wanted to go on record quickly in support of the applicant. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think there's two interpretation cases, but the applicant filed a letter to withdraw those. We just need a vote on that.
Okay, can I have a motion? Oh, sorry, Mr. Stenbridge should read it into the record.
Well,
Jump in the gun. Jump in the gun.
For the interpretation, 1 o'clock. First is case BOA 1501970 with the address of 80 to 100 Smith Street. Along with that, we have case BOA 1501979 with the address being 94 St. Alphonse Street, both of which, as Javier says, have requested to be withdrawn.
Okay, so with that, can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the withdrawals.
Is there a second? Mr. Stenbridge?
Yes.
Ms. Wewell?
Yes.
Mr. Valencia?
Yes.
Ms. Panado?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, motion carries. Happy Halloween. All right.
Recording stop.
We're good, Javier, thank you.